I'm Suzanne McCorkle from Boise State University. Today we're going to talk about how do we make our public speaking presentations better in the courses that we teach. So across the disciplines, departments have been adding communication skills to their curricula for a variety of reasons. And one of those aspects that comes out of that is that people have added public speaking components to a variety of assignments. Sometimes we just sort of paste that on to an existing assignment, and we don't tell the students really what we expect out of the presentational part of the assignment that we've made. And when we do that, we're often disappointed with the results. So what this talk does is it talks about what are the choice points when we make a public speaking assignment that can help us tell students what our expectations are and therefore get better results out of the assignment. So when we think about a public speaking assignment, there's really 5 things that we can be thinking about that we might want from that assignment. We might want to focus on students' organization. We might want to focus on reasoning, or speech delivery, or how to do PowerPoint presentations and use visual aids, or sometimes we just want students to share what they found out on their own research assignments or perhaps an article that they've read. So the first question we have to ask is, what is my personal goal with this assignment that I'm making that involves public speaking? Let's take a look first at when we want students to focus on their organization. Well, focusing on organization means that we want them to have a thesis. We want them to know that they have some main points that are supporting that thesis, and then usually we will want them to be able to preview what the main points are. So if that is my goal, the question becomes, how do I help students do that? Well, one way is to have an assignment before the actual day of the speech presentation that forces them to focus on organization. So we can do that through a worksheet. The worksheet that you're looking at now forces students to tell me in advance what their general topic is, what the purpose for their speech is, tell me what their thesis is, and then their main points. After students turn this in, perhaps a week or so before the actual assignment is due, I can quickly scan these items, and then I can detect which students either don't know what I'm talking about or might need a little bit more help in focusing in on organization. Well, what if I have a different goal in mind for that speech assignment? What if I want them to focus on reasoning? Well, if I want them to focus on reasoning, then we're probably looking at taking those main points and saying, how are they supporting those main points? What evidence are they bringing to those main points? And again, a worksheet in advance may help me detect students that either don't know what I'm talking about when I say you have to have evidence, or perhaps are picking bad evidence. So if I assign a different worksheet a week or so in advance, again, I might ask the students, what's your topic, what's your purpose, what's your thesis, and then for each of your main points, how do you intend to prove that main point? What sort of evidence are you bringing to it, and perhaps even what are the sources of that evidence? Then I can detect if students are choosing bad proof, are choosing proof that isn't really related to the claim that they're trying to make, or perhaps are choosing things as evidence that I don't really think are appropriate. A third goal I might have for a public speaking assignment is to ask students to focus on their delivery. And when I'm asking students to focus on their delivery, we're really talking about what are you doing with your voice, what are you doing with your body, those sorts of things. And if I'm asking students to focus on delivery, in general, they need to know what I mean by that. What are my expectations? And so I should tell them, do I really care that everything is exactly right in their voice or exactly right in their body movements, or do I have more modest expectations? I can provide examples for them from YouTube videos. I like the TED Talks. There's some really good examples there that can fit almost anyone's level of expectation for what you want on delivery. I can discuss what kind of things they can add to their speech to make it more interesting. For example, examples or maybe analogies, those sorts of things. I can discuss what I expect from their use of gestures, from their use of vocal variety, all of those sorts of things, what kind of notes might be appropriate for them to use, if they should manuscript or speak extemporaneously. And then the last thing I should probably talk about are visual aids. Do I want to require them to have visual aids? Do I want to prohibit them from having visual aids? Because that adds an extra component onto a speech that, depending on what my level of expectations are, may or may not be helpful. We have a follow-up talk about visual aids, and so I'm not going to go into that in any more depth in this talk. So we've talked about several of the goals that I might have in an assignment, but what if all I really want them to do is to share information? So sometimes I've had students doing a research project or maybe focusing in on an article, and I really just want them to share with the rest of the class what they've learned. Well, if I'm looking for sharing, public speaking assignments where the individual talks to the whole class may or may not be the right way to go. And if I just want sharing, I may or may not want all of those talks on the same day. For example, if I'm having them read articles, maybe I would only have 1 or 2 students speak on their articles a day and spread that assignment out throughout the entire semester. That way no one becomes fatigued, because we know from research that after 2 or 3 speeches, interest seems to wane, and the student learning from what their colleagues are saying really would be reduced. So I may have every student give a speech, or I may not. And I may have them all give them on the same day, or I may spread that throughout the entire semester. Another choice, if I'm interested in sharing, is not to have them give speeches at all, but rather to have them give what I call speed conversations. And this is where I tell students in advance what your job is to talk about the main elements from what you learned in your research project or the article that you read. But I want you just to talk about it. I want you to select from the longer paper that they may be turning into me what the most interesting aspects are, and converse about that with a small group of students. So I'll arrange them in groups of 3 or 4, ask one person to take the lead in starting a conversation. The rest of the students will add in what was similar or different in their own research projects. They'll talk for 5, 6, 10 minutes, and then I'll switch them into another group and they'll have the same conversation again. A different person leads, and so the actual conversation winds up being something quite different for them, even if they are in 3 or 4 different groups. So speed conversations, kind of set up like the speed dating model, sometimes helps convey information and share information, but in a much more engaging way than traditional public speaking. So what we can conclude from this talk is that assignments without limits, as far as what we expect from students, really can lead to chaos and disappointment on everybody's part. So hopefully telling students more about what we expect, perhaps assigning some advanced worksheets, will really help get us better results.